She signed the termination before he finished speaking. The glass conference room on the 32nd floor caught the morning light like a verdict, clean, sharp, unforgiving. Emily Carter sat at the head of the table the way she always did, both hands flat, spine straight, CFO to her left, Ryan to her right. The slide on the screen read, "Mark Reed, low performance. Missed critical deadline." "He failed to deliver," Ryan said. "The report was incomplete." Emily didn't ask why. She didn't ask when. She uncapped the pen. "We don't carry dead weight," she signed. "Send him in." Mark walked through the glass door holding a document binder. Thick, tabbed, worn at the corners like something built over months. He set it on the table in front of her. "Before you do this," he said, "read page 47. Emily slid the binder back without opening it, without looking down. "That's not my concern anymore. Security will walk you out." She had the answer in her hands. She pushed it away, but she had no idea this decision would come back to haunt her. 3 minutes later, the chairman stepped through the side door. The room went still. Who flagged the hidden loss exposure in that acquisition? No one spoke. What happens next? Why is the chairman here? And who exactly is the man she just fired? The answer is in the next part. The boardroom on the 14th floor of the Hartwell Group's old building smelled like leather and old money. The kind of room that had decided things for decades before Emily Carter was old enough to decide anything at all. She was 26 that morning. October 14th. Tuesday. She had prepared for 3 weeks. Index cards. Color-coded tabs. A financial model she'd rebuilt from scratch because the original had a rounding error no one else had caught. She stood at the front of the room with her notes in her hands and began to speak. The board members listened the way people listen to background music. Politely. Distantly. One man, Charles Wentworth, senior partner, gray suit, silver cufflinks, scrolled something on his phone. Another studied the ceiling. She was halfway through her second slide when Wentworth spoke. "Let's hear from someone with more field experience." He didn't look up from his phone when he said it. Emily stopped mid-sentence. The room didn't shift. No one flinched. No one said, "Actually, let her finish." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was settled. Like a door closing on a room that was never really hers to enter. She sat down. Her jaw was tight. Her hands were flat on her thighs. She looked straight ahead at the projection screen, where her slide still glowed. 3 weeks of work, frozen on the wall while someone else talked. She didn't forget that moment. She filed it somewhere deep and load-bearing. 8 years of decisions followed. 8 years of moving faster, signing quicker, reading faster, sleeping less. She climbed through precision, through making the call before anyone else had finished formulating the question, through being right often enough that people stopped questioning how she got there. By 34, she was CEO of Hartwell Capital Group. The boardroom was on the 32nd floor now, all glass. Her name was on the letterhead. Charles Wentworth had retired 2 years ago. She had built one operating principle into everything she ran, the kind of principle that feels like wisdom until it calcifies into something else. Data doesn't lie. Systems don't have feelings. Trust the number, not the story behind it. It had made her right. It had made her fast. And because it had made her right so many times, she had stopped questioning whether it could make her wrong. The morning of March 3rd began the way all her mornings did. A 6 a.m. review of overnight numbers, a protein bar eaten standing at her desk, emails flagged and dispatched before most of her team had brewed their first coffee. By 9:15, she was in the weekly Analyst briefing. Ryan Holt sat across from her, neat, composed, a legal pad in front of him with clean bullet points already written. Mark Reed sat 2 seats down, quiet in the way he was always quiet, a stack of folders beside his coffee cup. A junior analyst, James Okafor, 3 months in, was walking through a demand forecast model. He was nervous. His voice had the quality of someone who knows something is wrong, but isn't sure if they're allowed to say so. I think there might be a structural issue with how we're weighting the... Emily didn't look up from her laptop. I don't need the story behind the number. I need the number. James stopped, sat down. The room absorbed the silence the way rooms do when they've absorbed it many times before. Ryan wrote something on his legal pad. Then he glanced at Mark across the table, a fraction of a second, and gave the faintest nod. The kind that meant, "See? I told you." Emily moved to the next agenda item. She didn't notice the look. She never noticed the looks. Mark Reed drove a 2017 Honda Civic with a cracked dashboard he kept meaning to fix. He packed Mia's lunch every morning. Peanut butter and honey, no crust, the same thing she'd asked for every day since 2nd grade, and dropped her at Jefferson Elementary on Sycamore Drive before 7:45 so she could get a good seat in art class. He was 38. He looked 44. 3 years since Sophie died. 3 years since the world had reorganized itself into before and after, and he had quietly chosen to live entirely in the after because Mia needed someone who showed up. In the hospital parking lot on a Wednesday in February, Mark had decided that showing up was the only thing he could still control. His previous company had been called Vance Partners. He'd been their top analyst for 4 years. He had built the Caldwell portfolio model, the one that caught the offshore liability discrepancy, the one the firm presented to the board to a standing ovation. His name had not been in the presentation. A senior analyst named Patrick Deng had taken the materials 2 days before the meeting and submitted them under his own name. Mark found out the Monday after, when a colleague congratulated Patrick in the hallway, and Patrick didn't correct him. Mark hadn't sued. His friend Dom had said, "You have documentation, you have emails, you can fight this." Mark looked at the ceiling for a long time before answering. Mia was 6. I didn't want her first memory of her dad to be him fighting. He came to Hartwell 14 months later. He was good at his job. Quietly, thoroughly, unglamorously good. He checked his numbers 3 times. He stayed late. He had no political allies, no visibility in the meetings that mattered. In the system's language, he was low presence. But he had never stopped thinking about what it cost to lose work you built with your own hands. So he had built everything since with the same quiet rigor, documented, sourced, unambiguous. Protection through precision. The night of March 2nd, a Friday. Mia had a school holiday the following Monday, which was why the lights in the apartment were still on at 11 p.m. She'd stayed up reading, then fallen asleep on the couch with her book on her chest, which Mark had only discovered when he called home from the office and heard her groggy voice answer instead of going to voicemail. He was at his desk when she called back on video. Lamp on. The rest of the floor dark. "Dad, did you eat dinner?" "Almost. One more page." "You said that an hour ago." He smiled. The tiredness in it was something she was old enough to recognize but too young to name. On his monitor, a line in the Meridian subsidiary report was highlighted in yellow. Y. Revenue projection. A footnote at the bottom of the page in 8-point font. "Baby, I'll call you back in 20 minutes. He didn't call back. He pulled his notepad closer and his handwriting tightened. A $340 million liability, folded into a footnote about a decommissioned logistics arm, not hidden through illegal concealment, but hidden through the assumption that no one would look here. That the model assumed clean numbers, and the model was wrong. The revenue projection on page 47 was inflated by 23%. He wrote it down, wrote the implication, wrote it again cleaner, in a separate section, because he had learned, at a company called Vance Partners, that documentation needed to be unambiguous. Before he shut down that night, he did what he always did. Cloud backup. Personal drive. 2 folders. Muscle memory. The same ritual since the day he walked out of Vance Partners. Numbers don't disappear if you keep a copy. He turned off the lamp. The office went dark. Ryan Holt was 35, clean-shaven, with the confident posture of someone who has never had to fight for the room's attention because he learned early how to simply take it. He had been at Hartwell for 4 years. Senior analyst for 2. He knew how to read Emily Carter, knew she moved fast, trusted people who matched her pace, found uncertainty irritating the way some people find background noise irritating. So he had made himself useful by being certain, by bringing her the answer rather than the question. The Meridian acquisition was $2 billion, 40 cents billion. If it closed cleanly, the VP position held quietly in reserve would become his. He had known this for 6 weeks. He had also known for 8 days that Mark Reed was looking at page 47. Ryan accessed Mark's working files on the shared drive on the evening of February 23rd. Legitimate access, nothing unusual for a senior analyst overseeing M&A preparation. What came after was something else entirely. He copied the analysis, removed the attribution, removed the warning on page 47, the inflated projection, the liability footnote, the 23% discrepancy, and replaced it with a clean conclusion. Green light. Proceed. He adjusted the timestamps using a temporary admin credential he held for a systems onboarding transition. Routine access. Nothing that would flag a surface audit. Then he went to Martin Voss, CFO, second Wednesday lunch, their daughter's soccer team, and told him Mark's section was incomplete, that he'd had to finalize it himself to meet the deadline. Martin, who had never had a reason not to trust Ryan, made a note and signed a confirmation without verifying it independently. Ryan didn't think of what he'd done as wrong. He thought of it as correcting a hesitation. The deal needed to close. Mark was raising an objection that in Ryan's read was analytical anxiety at best. He had simply helped the process move in the direction it was already going. This was the most dangerous version of dishonesty, the kind that believes in itself. He closed his laptop at 9 p.m. I slept without difficulty. The morning of March 3rd, 48 hours until the deal closed. The glass boardroom held 9 people at 10 a.m. Emily at the head of the table. Ryan to her right. Martin Voss across from him. 4 senior staff. 1 empty chair. Then, Mark walked in. He was carrying the binder. Dark blue cover, tab sections, pages that crinkled at the corners the way paper does after a long night. He set it on the table with the careful deliberateness of someone who had carried it a long way. He had known on the walk from the elevator to this room that this moment might go badly. He had thought about Mia at the kitchen table. He had thought about Vance Partners, about Patrick Deng, about the standing ovation in a boardroom where his name wasn't on the slide. He had come anyway. He placed the binder down and sat. Ryan spoke before Mark had settled into his chair. We've reviewed everything. Mark's section was incomplete. I had to finalize it to meet the deadline. Level. Daltai. Certain. The voice of someone who has decided how the conversation will go. Emily looked at Mark. Mark didn't look at Ryan. He looked at Emily. Directly, without apology, without performance. The revenue projection on page 47 is inflated by 23%. His voice was quiet. Steady. The Meridian subsidiary has a liability of approximately $340 million hidden in a footnote. If you sign today, you'll know about it in 18 months when it's too late. The room was still. That's a significant claim, Emily said. It's a documented claim. It's in this report. He slid the binder across the table. It stopped 3 feet from her hands. Ryan responded immediately. We verified those numbers across 3 separate models. Mark has been struggling with the Meridian data for 2 weeks. That's why he missed the deadline." He gestured toward Martin without looking at him. Martin nodded. His voice was flat. He failed to deliver. The report was incomplete. 2 voices. An official record. A system already written. Against 1 analyst and a binder no one had opened. Emily looked at the clock. Analog, black hands. 48 hours. Partners downstairs. The board watching this deal like a referendum on her tenure. She looked at the binder. 3 feet away. Her hand moved toward it, a half second, instinctive. Her fingers were an inch from the cover. Then she pulled back, straightened, pushed the binder across the table toward Mark. She did not open it. She did not look down. "I've heard enough." Her voice was even, controlled. "We're not delaying a $2.40 billion deal based on an unverified footnote from someone who missed his own deadline." She turned toward the door. "Mr. Reed, security will walk you out." Mark stood. He picked up the binder. He looked at Emily one last time, not angry, not pleading. Just the face of someone who had done what he came to do and carried no surprise about what followed. "That footnote is going to cost you more than this deal is worth." She didn't answer. She had already turned toward the window. 32 floors below, a delivery truck made a slow left turn on Washington Street, its signal blinking orange in the gray March air. The door clicked shut. In the space Mark left behind, something small settled in Emily's chest. Not guilt. Not yet. The ghost of the hand she'd almost extended. A half second she hadn't finished and wouldn't examine. Not yet. Not now. She moved to the next agenda item. Mark was in the elevator when the side door opened. Not the main door. The private corridor door, the one used by board members, the one that appeared on no public floor plan. Emily had seen it used perhaps a dozen times in 8 years. Her father walked through it. James Carter was 64. He had built Hartwell from a 2-person advisory firm into what it was now, and his chairman emeritus role was understood by everyone to mean he still watched everything, just more quietly. He was carrying a folder. He set it on the table without sitting down. "I asked an independent auditor to review this acquisition 3 weeks ago." He stood slightly apart from the table, the way he always stood, as if he'd learned that rooms listen better when you're not entirely in them. "The audit finalized this morning. I've done this with every deal over $1 billion for 30 years. Not because I don't trust the team, because deals that look too clean always worry me." He opened the folder, slid a single page to the center of the table. Revenue inflation of 23% in the Meridian projection. A liability of $340 million in a subsidiary footnote. Estimated exposure if we close on this timeline, $700 million in losses within 18 months. He looked around the table. "Whoever flagged this internally, where are they? Because they just saved this company." Silence. Not the silence of a room thinking. The silence of a room that knows the answer and is waiting to see who says it first. Emily looked at the center of the table, the space where the binder had been sitting 15 minutes ago, the space her hand had reached and then retreated from. Ryan said nothing. His legal pad was in front of him, the clean bullet points written before the meeting, the prepared certainties, and he stared at it the way a person stares at something that has become unrecognizable. Martin Voss turned slowly toward Ryan. His expression was the expression of a man running arithmetic, recalculating, placing himself, with increasing clarity, inside a story he was only now understanding. Emily said nothing. She was thinking about the binder, about the specific weight of the moment she had chosen not to open it, not because the information wasn't there, not because she hadn't had time, because she had already decided, and reading page 47 would have required her to undecide. And undeciding, she had believed, was weakness. The distinction settled in her chest like something structural shifting. The system hadn't failed her. She had chosen not to use it. Outside the glass walls, the office floor moved as it always moved. Keyboards, phones, the indifferent hum of a building that didn't yet know what had just happened on the 32nd floor. The forensic request went to it at 2:47 p.m. Ouchie. Emily had spent 11 minutes with the security footage before she picked up the phone. 11 minutes watching the timestamp in the corner of a grainy hallway camera tick through the quiet hours of March 2nd. The surface logs were clean. Ryan's access records showed routine check-ins during business hours. Appropriate timestamps. Appropriate credentials. Nothing that would trip a standard audit. The system told her everything was fine. But the camera on the 12th floor showed Mark Reed at his desk at 11:04 p.m. Lamp on, screen bright, leaning forward in the posture of someone inside a problem. And Ryan Holt leaving at 6:17 p.m., coffee in hand, shaking the security guard's hand at the front desk with the ease of a man who makes a point of learning people's names. Emily paused on the 11:04 p.m. frame. Incomplete. That was what the record said. Incomplete men don't sit at their desks at 11 o'clock at night. She picked up the phone. I need a forensic audit. Not surface logs, everything, access history, file versions, metadata, timestamp integrity. That takes time, Ms. Carter. I know. Start now. She set the phone down, sat very still. It was the first time in 8 years that she had looked at a result her system produced and thought, what if the system is the problem? Not the data. The system. The architecture she had built around it. The one that moved fast, trusted confirmation, and had no room for the story behind the number. She didn't know yet what she would find. But something had changed, quietly, in the way she was asking the question. The forensic report landed at 9:20 a.m. the following morning. David Park, the senior technician, delivered it in 3 pages. He wore the same gray cardigan he wore every day, and spoke in the unhurried sentences of someone who has spent decades being careful with what he says. Page 1. Timestamp discrepancy. The official report had been modified at 2:17 a.m. on March 3rd. The surface log showed 9:00 a.m. The gap only surfaced when underlying metadata was compared against the overwritten log, something a standard audit skips. A forensic examination does not. Page 2. The backup. An automated cloud sync had captured Mark's original file at 11:47 p.m. on March 2nd. The sync was a habit, not a deliberate act. Mark had configured it years earlier and run it every night without thinking. When it contacted him for the forensic investigation and explained what they were looking for, he provided access to the personal account immediately, without hesitation. David placed 2 documents side by side on the table. Ryan's submitted version. No author attribution. Page 47 gutted. The warning gone. The liability footnote gone. The 23% discrepancy replaced with a clean summary. Green light. Proceed. Mark's backup. Author field reading, Mark Reed, Senior Analyst. Created 11:43 p.m., March 2nd. Page 47 intact. Liability documented, projection flagged, discrepancy noted with supporting calculations in an appendix that had also been removed from Ryan's version. Emily looked at the 2 documents for a long time. 2 versions of the same event. Only one of them was true. She asked David to leave. Then she asked Ryan to come in. He walked in the way he always walked in, unhurried, composed. He sat across from her. His eyes moved to the 2 documents, held there for 1 second, returned to her face. Did you access his file? I was trying to meet the deadline. The report was... Did you access his file? The glass walls held the afternoon light. Ryan's jaw was tight. He looked to his left, toward Martin Voss, the man who had confirmed his version of events 48 hours ago. Martin was looking at the table, hands flat. He didn't look up. Her father's voice came from the far end of the room. Not loud. The forensic report goes to the board this afternoon. If anyone wants to clarify their role before that happens, now is the time. Martin understood immediately. She watched him understand, the recalculation visible in the small shift of his posture, the recognition that silence here converted him from a man who had been careless into something worse. Ryan asked me to confirm Mark's task completion status, Martin said. His voice was careful. I trusted his assessment. I didn't verify independently. Ryan looked at Martin, said nothing. It was the first time Emily had seen Ryan Holt with nothing prepared. He signed the resignation letter at 4:15 p.m. The evidence was complete. Her father had been clear about what happened if he declined. Ryan signed without negotiation. Left without collecting his legal pad, the one with the clean bullet points, the prepared certainties, still sitting on the conference table. Martin Voss was formally removed from the M&A approval chain for 6 months and issued a written reprimand. His culpability was real but bounded. He had been careless and trusting in the wrong direction, not conspiratorial. The chairman believed in making that distinction. Emily stood at the window after the room cleared. Below, Washington Street moved without interest in what had just happened, 32 floors up. She had built a room where Ryan could do what he did. That was what she kept coming back to. Not the forgery, that was Ryan's. Not Martin's failure to verify, that was his. But the environment. The culture of a room where no one slowed down, where certainty was rewarded and hesitation was edited out, where a junior analyst had sat down mid-sentence because she'd told him she didn't need the story behind the number. Ryan had found a room with no friction. He had used it. She had built it. She read his personnel file alone that night. Not the summary dashboard. The actual file. Scanned documents, reference letters, the full paper record buried in a subfolder that required 3 clicks to reach. 4 years advanced partners. Top analyst ranking, 3 consecutive years. Then a 6-week gap and a resignation letter that said pursuing other opportunities in the careful, airless language of someone who knows that what they really want to say would only make things harder. A reference letter from his former manager, Sandra Yee. Typed, professional, neutral. The kind that confirms employment dates and offers no opinion. But the file held a faxed physical copy from before the firm had moved fully digital. And in the margin, in handwriting that was narrow and deliberate. This man deserved better. Emily sat with that sentence for a while. She pulled up his performance ratings at Hartwell. Not the current quarter, further back, 14 months. The ratings had sloped downward in the last 3 months, beginning precisely when Ryan had taken over the M&A preparation team. No complaints from Mark. No incident reports. Just a quiet, almost gentle erosion of a number, the kind of thing that looks like performance data and isn't. She called his number. Voicemail. She called HR Way. Miss Carter. That's protected information. We'd need written authorization. Send me the form. I'll sign it. She signed it. Got the address. Sat for a moment in her office as the city lights came on outside. Then she picked up her keys and drove herself across town. The house was on a street of modest homes, with small front yards and cars parked in narrow driveways. Nothing dramatic about it. Just the ordinary landscape of a life, lived on a careful budget. Emily parked and sat in the car for 2 full minutes before she got out. The girl who opened the door was 8 years old, and had her father's eyes. 2 braids, one slightly higher than the other. a gap in her front teeth. She looked at Emily the way only children look at strangers, direct, unhurried, without the social smoothing that adults apply automatically. "Are you from Dad's work?" "Yes." "He's making dinner. Come in." The house smelled like rice and garlic. A television murmured from the back room. In the front hallway, shoes were lined up by the door, one adult pair, worn at the heel, one small pair of sneakers with a broken lace reknotted into a shorter bow. Emily stopped at the kitchen table. A piece of paper, crayon, a figure hunched at a desk, a yellow circle of lamplight on the page, a dark window above showing blue crayon dots for stars. A child's rendering of something seen often enough to memorize. Below it, in the tilted handwriting of a second grader, Dad working late again. Emily stood looking at it. Something moved through her, not a single emotion, more like pressure. The distance between a decision made in a glass room and this drawing on a kitchen table was not very large. That was the part that stayed with her. Footsteps from the kitchen. Mark came out wearing a dark blue apron with flour on the chest. He saw Emily. Stopped. He didn't reach for anger. He didn't perform surprise. He stood with the particular tiredness of a person who has stopped being shocked by the things that happened to him. "Mia, give us a minute, please." Mia looked at Emily once more. The evaluating look, precise and unhurried, then went to her room. Mark untied the apron, draped it over a chair. "How did you get this address?" "HR. I signed the authorization form." A silence. The rice cooker clicked in the kitchen. "I'm sorry." No preamble. No list of context to soften it. Mark didn't answer immediately. He looked out the window at the front yard, a patch of grass that needed cutting, a single rose bush doing better than the grass. When he turned back, his voice was even, not cold, the voice of someone who has moved past the stage where anger feels useful. "You didn't fire me because I was wrong, Miss Carter. A beat. You fired me because I was easy to ignore." Emily opened her mouth, closed it. There was nothing to refute. Ryan had lied. That was true. But Ryan had required a specific kind of room to work in. A room with no friction. A room where the people with the least political weight were structurally invisible. She had maintained that room for years and called it efficiency. She stood with that knowledge in the small living room, and she did not look for a way around it. Mia came back from her room carrying a glass of water she hadn't been asked to bring. She handed it to Emily with the practical hospitality of someone who has decided guests get water regardless of the circumstances. "Thank you." Mia climbed into the armchair and looked between the two adults with the frank curiosity of a child at the edge of something she mostly understands. "Did my dad do something bad?" Emily's mouth opened. No executive language arrived. No polished response loaded itself up. Just the silence of a person who, for once, didn't have an answer already prepared. "No, but," she said it plainly. "He did everything right. I was the one who got it wrong." Mia received this with a slow nod. The nod of someone who finds the answer consistent with what she already believed. Then, she looked at her hands. "One time Dad cried. After his old job. He thought I was asleep." The room was very quiet. "He never told me what happened, but he made pancakes the next morning and said," she squinted slightly, remembering precisely, "Some people make bad choices, but we don't have to." Emily looked at Mark. Mark was looking somewhere past the window, jaw tight, the expression of a person hearing something true, spoken in a voice that doesn't understand its own full weight. Mia surveyed the situation with 8-year-old pragmatism. "We made enough rice if you want to stay." Emily stayed for dinner. She didn't announce it. She simply sat down when Mia placed a bowl in front of her, the matter apparently decided, and she ate rice with garlic pork, and listened to Mia explain the deeply unfair scoring system of Jefferson Elementary's Geography B. She left at 8 o'clock. At the door, she turned. "I'd like you to come back, under whatever terms make sense to you." Mark looked at her steadily. His hands were in his pockets. "I've been in 2 places now where doing the right thing made me a target." His voice was quiet. "Careful. Dema said him shot. After so. I think I need to see something change before I walk into a 3rd. "What would change look like to you?" "Not a promise," he said. "Actions." She nodded, drove home, lay awake for a long time thinking about a crayon drawing in a 2nd grader's handwriting and a man who had backed up his files every night for 3 years because he had learned once what it cost not to. 3 weeks passed. The work was not announced. It did not come with a company-wide email or a culture initiative or a rebranding of values. In the first week, the board was convened on a Wednesday afternoon. James Carter presented the forensic audit in full, every time-stamped discrepancy, every metadata comparison, the complete documentation of what had been done to Mark Reed's work and when. The board sat with it and said little. The institutional silence that followed was not concealment. It was the careful legal quarantine of a matter that was now on record, witnessed, and understood. In the 2nd week, Emily hired an independent consultancy to audit the personnel evaluation system for the previous 12 months. The brief was specific. Look for patterns. Cases where ratings had declined without corresponding documentation. Cases where analytical staff had been quietly diminished without cause. They found 3. Emily met with each person individually. No group announcements. No town halls about psychological safety. She sat across from 3 people the system had made smaller, and she listened, and she asked what they needed. One of them cried. She didn't move past it. In the 3rd week, a new channel appeared in the internal risk reporting portal. Any analyst at any level could flag a concern directly to the chairman's office, anonymous if preferred, bypassing every layer of middle management. It appeared on a Thursday morning with no fanfare. People found it the way people find things that are simply there when they weren't before. Mark found out through Marcus Cole, a methodical colleague who sent updates the way a weather station sends reports. Factual, consistent, without editorializing. Week 1. Ryan out. Board briefed. CFO removed from M&A chain for 6 months. Mark read it. Said nothing. Week 2. Independent HR auditors. Found 3 others. She's meeting with them personally. He made coffee. Stood at the kitchen window while Mia ate breakfast, her backpack already on, one braid already half escaped. Week 3. New risk channel. Direct to chairman. Anonymous option. No middle layer. He read this one at his desk. The same lamp, the same position, 11 p.m., the same window with the same dark sky. He sat with it for a long time. Then he typed back a single line. She actually did it. Marcus replied within a minute. Yeah. Mark set his phone down. Outside, the rosebush was doing what it always did, quietly, without requiring acknowledgement. He picked up his phone again. Found the number. Didn't call yet. But he held it. She called on a Friday morning. Her own phone. No assistant. I'd like to know if you'd consider coming back, under your terms. Mark was in the school pickup line on Sycamore Drive. He pulled to the curb and let the other cars move past. 3 conditions, he said. Tell me. Final review on every M&A report before it goes to the board. No exceptions. He spoke the way he wrote. without filler. If there's a conflict with anyone in the chain, it goes directly to the chairman. Not through a manager, not through a meeting. A pause. And I leave on time 2 days a week. I'll explain why. Silence from the other end. Done. All three. No counter. No request for flexibility. No gentle suggestion that Condition 2 might work better as a committee process. Just done. Mark watched a woman in a yellow raincoat try to convince a toddler to keep his hood up. The toddler had strong opinions about this. Can I ask you something? Yes. Why didn't you read page 47? The silence that followed was not deflection. It was the silence of someone looking directly at something they'd avoided for 3 weeks. Because if I read it, Emily's voice was even. The cadence of honesty rather than performance. I'd have to slow down a decision I'd already committed to, and I was afraid that looked like weakness. The 3 p.m. bell rang in the distance. The gates opened. Children spilled out in the unruly surge of a Friday afternoon. It would have looked like leadership, Mark said. He said it without satisfaction, without accusation. The way you say a true thing to someone who is finally ready to hear it. A long pause. I know that now, Emily said. Mia came through the gate at a run, backpack enormous, jacket unzipped, both braids fully destroyed, the expression of someone who has had an excellent Friday. She saw the car and ran harder. Monday? Emily asked. Monday, Mark said. The elementary school on Sycamore Drive let out at 3 o'clock. Mia came through the gate the way she came through every gate, with full commitment. She hit in at speed, looped her arms around his neck, and said into his shoulder, Dad, are you going back? Yeah. She pulled back to look at him, assessing. Same place? Same place, different rules? She considered this with the gravity she brought to important questions, then nodded. The conclusion apparently sound. Can we have pancakes tonight? The laugh came before he could moderate it, real and sudden, the laugh of a man surprised by his own relief. Yeah, he said. We can have pancakes. 40 floors up on the 32nd floor, morning light was crossing the glass conference table. A new team. A new deal. A different set of folders. James Okafor, the junior analyst who had started to say, I think there might be a structural issue 6 weeks ago, before being stopped mid-sentence, sat at the far end of the table. He had been included in this presentation because Emily had requested him by name. He was not entirely sure what to make of that. He was halfway through his second slide when Emily raised her hand. He stopped, braced. Before we go further, her voice was quiet. Something in it had changed, a register that had room in it, that wasn't moving toward the next item yet. Is there anything in this report that made you hesitate? Anything that felt off? James looked around the table. The other analysts watched him, waiting to understand the rules of the new room. He looked back at Emily. There's one assumption in the growth model I wasn't fully comfortable with. She didn't check her watch. She didn't look at her laptop. She sat back and looked at him, and she waited. Tell me, she said. The most dangerous decisions are made with complete confidence and incomplete truth. The most important ones begin with 2 words. Tell me. There is a version of strength that looks like never slowing down, never questioning the call you already made, never opening the binder someone set in front of you, because opening it means admitting you might be wrong, and you've spent years making sure no one gets to say that about you. Emily Carter wasn't a villain. She was someone who had been hurt, who built walls out of certainty, and called it competence. Most of us have done some version of this. We move fast because slowing down feels like weakness. We stop listening because we've already decided. We mistake confidence for clarity, and somewhere in that gap, we push away the very thing that could save us. Mark Reedy didn't save the company with brilliance or bravado. He saved it by doing the quiet, unglamorous work, and by keeping a copy, because he'd learned the hard way that truth needs somewhere to live. The most important thing he did wasn't page 47. It was showing up anyway, knowing he might be ignored again, because some things are worth saying even when no one is ready to hear them. That's not weakness. That's the whole thing. If something in this story hit different, the moment she almost opened the binder, the drawing on the kitchen table, the pancakes, drop it in the comments. Tell me which part stayed with you. I read every single one, and honestly, your comments are what make the next story worth writing. Like if Mark deserved better. Subscribe if you want to be here when the next one lands. See you in the next story.